Hi, thank you for joining me for another short talk. And friends, earlier today I put out a post about possibly being able to cook and eat pancakes and waffles during Passover, right? Making them during Passover, how they're regularly made. I'm not talking about with matzah meal or anything weird like that. What would be the issue with making something like that or anything that falls within the parameters of how this is made during Passover? And I think the big issue here why people suffer so much, and really anything they make that contains flour during Passover, it's typically the crumbling of matzah, what's known as matzah meal. The reason they do this is because people don't know what chametz actually is, right? And it's really because it's not translated correctly in other languages. In other words, it doesn't just mean leavening. It means the leavening of or things left to leaven from the 5 prohibited grains, not just anything. This is why baking soda or baking powder is allowed on Passover, because the leavening doesn't occur through the 5 grains. So think about it. How are pancakes made? How are waffles made? How are even Ritz crackers made? Now, I haven't researched Ritz crackers, but you're telling me that when someone makes a Ritz cracker, something to the like, that the dough is kneaded and then allowed to sit for 18 minutes by the strictest opinion, 22.5 minutes by the opinion in the middle, or 45 minutes by, one could say, the most liberal opinion. Rabbis like Rabbi David Barchaim says that is the standard, right, of how long it takes to walk a sheer mill, right? But that's for another discussion. But even, let's say, 18 minutes. Of course, someone would not let pancake batter or waffle batter sit for 18 minutes without it being kneaded. In other words, what is chametz? Well, I'll tell you. Chametz, again, it's not just flour, but it would be flour that's left to sit for 18 minutes and, i.e., allowed to rise. In other words, if you keep on kneading the flour for 2 days straight, it would still not become chametz, because again, it only becomes chametz, i.e. what's translated as leavened, if it's left to sit for 18 minutes. So pancake batter is whipped up. I'm saying if it's made from scratch, if it's made with flour and baking soda, I'm not talking about your Aunt Jemima's pancake mix. Hold on, there's a truck passing by here. If it's made from scratch, you're whipping it up and you're throwing it right in the griddle. 100% permissible on Passover. It's allowed. This is what's encouraged. And even, according to the Rambam, if you use fruit juice, it will never halachically rise, even if you stop kneading it after 18 minutes. Now, I know what's understood today in terms of the 18 minutes is the gross interpretation by groups like Chabad, that they believe that right when the water touches the kemach, the flour, that from that moment you only have 18 minutes to pop it into the oven. And that's a gross twisting of the actual halakha. Again, it's 18 minutes from when you stop kneading, or in this case, mixing the batter, that's prohibited. 18 from the most liberal perspective, from the most conservative perspective, and 45 minutes by the most liberal understanding or interpretation of a sheer mill. So not just pancakes and waffles would be allowed, but a whole array of foods that we think are prohibited. I mean, honestly, even if you stretched out your own pizza dough and heck, let it sit for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, right? And then threw the ingredients on it and put it in the oven, that would be allowed for Passover, right? So there's no point in making matzah pizzas. There's no point in making matzah brie or buying matzah meal. This is for people that don't know. We, as halachic Jews, as Jews who actually we live in Torah Shabbat Peh, don't just try to interpret scripture on our own. No, but we have a consensus that was already laid down. We have checks and balances developed by Chazal, by the men of the Great Assembly, by the elders, by the men of the Sanhedrin, that gave us parameters on how to do these things. So this Passover doesn't have to be Yom Kippur for you, okay? Your dishes could be a lot more colorful, and outside of just like making regular loafy, like fluffy bread, there's really almost nothing that can't be made kosher for Passover that's made the same way that it's made during the year. Okay, now I understand on the whole notion of white flour. Okay, well, there's debates on what kind of flour you can use, but even if you just went and bought kemach that's shmura kemach, or guarded flour they sell in the kosher market, okay, fine, use that. The more liberal opinions allow you to use even whitewashed flour. That doesn't even necessarily count for days outside of the first two seders, where one is required to eat shmura matzah. But that's another argument. You don't have to suffer during Passover. That's the point of this talk, okay? Now, the reason I labeled this video Waffles and Pancakes is because that's probably the simplest guide to eating delicious food on Passover, or baking something and breaking out of the mold of thinking that everything that has flour in it, or even flour itself, is chametz. You're allowed to have flour in your house on Passover, right? Apart from what many rabbis may tell you today, in the old days, people cooked matzahs on Passover, right? Even during Passover, during the seders, but they would bake their own matzahs. But they didn't have to stock up a week before, which is what they do nowadays. Now it's really a kind of a dumbing down of the actual halakha, of the actual practice, right? So if you think about it, you can even technically, to a certain extent, make pitot, right? These little flat breads that you toss in the oven, nice and fluffy, and not break any halakha. But anyways, like we do with anything we teach, okay, that we're not here to tell you what to believe, but we're here to help you to think in a halachic manner. For more information about everything Jewish, please visit TorahJudaism.com. Thank you.